Page 6 of your quarterly report, John, you state POAL is closely monitoring and managing health and safety at its workplace. Could you tell me in the quarter if there were any court cases with regard to health and safety at the port, and if so, what were the outcomes?
There was a court case, I think, from a worker who fell through a hatch on a ship. So there was a prosecution, I think, brought by the Maritime Safety Authority, not by WorkSafe. And I'm not sure of the outcome. I think the outcome of that was the company was found guilty of not providing a safe working environment for that instance, which was perhaps 2 to 2.5 years ago.
And what would the outcomes of that be in terms of changes to practice, and was there a fine for that?
I think there was a fine. I'm not sure of what the amount was. I'd rather focus on the performance of things in the last 6 months. In the last 6 months,
that's what I was asking questions about. Are you saying it wasn't in the last 6 months?
No, I think the incident occurred over 2 years ago.
Right, so there was no court cases in the last 6 months of this report?
There was a court case, but there were no incidents of lost time injury in the last 6 months at the ports.
Sorry, I'm confused now. What was the court case? Was that the one you've just referred to?
Yes, the court case was about an incident that was over 2 years ago.
It's just coming through.
Councillor Darby.
It would be quite good to have that reported, and I know I keep asking about this, but I'm quite interested in those figures. When you report on health and safety at the ports, it'd be quite good to have that.
Well, what we're reporting on is what happens in the quarter, and the quarter for us is what injuries or what accidents occur in the quarter under review.
So that will get reported on if something happens in the quarter, is what. Councillor Darby.
Thank you. And yes, the Mayor's right. The capital growth on the Auckland International Airport over the last 3 years has been absolutely phenomenal to our benefit, as has the dividend. But the dividend coming out of the port company, we've demanded quite a high dividend. Mm-hmm. I think it's 75% of net profit, is it?
No, it's 80%. 80% of underlying profit.
80%. I guess the question for me is ACIL confident that that's not too much, that there is retained capital to develop the port, and I don't want to get into the detail of what that might be, but are you confident that retained earnings profit is enough to grow the port?
We think that it's, or I personally think that it's a little bit tight, and there will be periods. Ports typically go through cycles of capital expenditure, and when you're going through a cycle with large capex, then that ratio may be too high. In our current budgets, though, we're continuing to work on that ratio. One of the issues, I guess, to be discussed, and will come out of the Cameron and EY report, is a significant amount of capex for the ports of Auckland is not being spent in Auckland. It's being spent on land in the Waikato, in Palmerston North, building of customer facilities such as warehouses and call stores and other things. And the real question is how that gets funded and whether that's the best use of Auckland Council and ratepayers' money in terms of how that additional capex gets funded. But that'll come through the EY report when that's considered, I guess, at some later stage.
Thank you.
Mayor Goff, a supplementary.
Yeah, under Ports of Auckland, you've got car volumes and tracking upwards of 22 to 24% ahead of budget in last year. In the port study, I think it indicated that bulk cargo reached capacity in the ports of Auckland within 3 to 10 years. Does that suggest you might reach capacity on your current footprint and arrangements ahead of that time?
I'm not sure whether it's the cars or other bulk freight that drives the reaching of capacity. So I can't answer that, but very happy to come back and see whether that's changed. Cars, again, are very cyclical. It's not just cars, it's clearly construction vehicles, tradesmen's vehicles, etc. that come through. So some of it's driven by economic cycles and economic activity as well.
If you could come back on that, that would be helpful, and maybe if you could also indicate what percentage of bulk cargo cars actually constituted at the ports of Auckland.
23%.
One last question,
23, is it?
John. It's are you happy that AT are consulting you and working with you on the film studio space? Because obviously we have the interest in Henderson, but obviously that we as a family are looking at other options for film studios, given the limitations at Henderson.
I can say that we are working closely with ATEED and indeed Council and indeed Panuku over the best use of that film studio site in the long term.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
Thank you. And
Appreciate it.
like Lester, Merry Christmas from both my board and myself to the Council. We look forward to working with you next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Right, we've made up a little bit of time, so we'll just apologise for those that are banking up. We have 80, but so Don, you'll have to just be a little bit more patient, I'm afraid.
Makes money too.
So we have 80 folks. We have David, Martin, and Joy. Oh, Steve. Right, Steve.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and thank you again, councillors, for the invitation to be here. First up, just an apology from Brett, who's on annual leave this week, so can't be here. I've brought along trusted backup to help me on detail. In fact, I'll actually throw it over to them very shortly, just to take you through a brief summary of the report. Probably just a couple of things to highlight. Firstly, that we have been operating within budget, and there's some timing issues there, obviously, which, if more detail is required, we can give you. Second, we're sort of in line to achieve our KPIs from the SO, from a statement of intent. Probably the only one there that there's some risk around is the number of business events that we may win or secure. However, from a value standpoint, we're still on track to meet that target. So the numbers might be down, but the overall value that they, from the portfolio, should be achieved. And probably the other one to highlight is that you'll see on some of the budget numbers approximately a further 20-odd million of funding coming from other sources, mainly government. There probably is a further about 10 million on top of that that we leverage, but doesn't come through the accounts because it's essentially funded through sort of in-kind services. So I just want to make you aware of that. So if you're okay, I may hand over to Martin Fairweather just to take us through the brief presentation.
Thank you, David. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of some of the highlights and achievements in our Q1 report. Under our Innovation and Entrepreneurship heading, with Grid Auckland and Lysart Building, we've got our hosted companies up to about 56 now, and 70 events were held down in the Grid over the first quarter. Companies in there are tech-based companies, and there's some really good stories of companies growing quite quickly. 90 Seconds is a really good example of a videography platform business which has secured almost $8 million of US funding to help it sort of grow internationally and go global. ThoughtWired is a company which is developing mind-controlled robotics to support people with disabilities. So you can see the range of companies that are starting to get down into Grid with some really great innovation. We continue to develop the buildings and the community down there, activating the space, and continued also under the entrepreneurship banner of delivery of the Young Enterprise Scheme focused on mental support, but equally Dragon's Den for those students and groups who are actually progressing through the scheme. Under the skilled talent heading, we've got 57 employers signed up to the Employer Pledge. That's a great initiative to help connect employers with young Aucklanders seeking work, and the number on the pledge continues to grow. A number of awards were held, which a number of councillors actually attended during the end of the quarter, with a number of categories there for Best Employer, but also Youth Induction and Develop and Maori and Pacifica Diversity Awards. JobFest was held as well, which is another a great initiative to encourage and help people get into work. 2,000 young people with 80 employers offering almost 800 full and part-time positions, and the highest numbers jobs that was ever offered at a job fest coming through. The Build Auckland campaign as well, helping to connect people into the construction industry with a number of paid work experience opportunities at the end of that for those successful through the competition. That's concluded now with the 10 finalists announced on the website. We also held the Auckland International Education Conference with the theme of building Auckland's reputation for students, with a number of really important stakeholders attending and debating a number of strategic issues for the sector. In terms of business and investment, the quarter was quite busy. We opened the AR/VR garage, or augmented reality and virtual reality garage, in the Uptown Innovation Precinct. This was a priority action that was agreed following tripartite, but also links back to the priority item in the EDS around a screen infrastructure. We also issued a large number of permits from 1st of July through to 30th of September. There was a slight dip during the September, but we can safely say that that's built back up again to increased levels during October and November. We've also continued to explore potential sites and partners and operating models for the new screen precinct infrastructure, working with both group finance within Auckland Council, ACIL and Panuka and other partners along the way. We've also, AT was elected to the Board of Directors of the Asian Film Commission for a second successive year, which we've been asked to represent the broader interests of the New Zealand Film Commission and other regional film offices upon that particular body. And we've also facilitated the establishment of 3 significant multinationals into Auckland in both the construction and the screen sectors. In terms of the visitor economy, the major events portfolio continues to roll out the schedule of areas where we've supported. You can see a list in the report, but also up there. These have generated about 32,000 visitor nights during the period. Naturally, the biggest period of our season is yet to come up into sort of Q3, which really drives the numbers. And it's worth saying in that 32,000 as well that the V8s is not included within those numbers at this stage, where the evaluation is still being completed. You had a presentation from Jenna Wootton from World Masters Games, I think one of the previous committees, but it's good to see that the registrations continue to grow in that particular space. We continue to monitor that both from a registrations perspective, a revenue perspective, and also a risk perspective as we work through. Another piece of good news was around a successful applications to Auckland Airport's 4 Seasons 5 Senses fund, which actually enables a collaboration of Auckland, Northern Maori tourism operators to create a combined proposition to showcase Maori culture. And in terms of the identity, we are running the Spring National Marketing Campaign targeting prospective visitors in the visiting friends and relatives category and new domestic visitors. It's also a great opportunity for us to activate the city with residents as well, to enable them to actually participate more broadly across the region and engage people and their friends as they come to visit. And finally, in terms of governance, we've also had a new board appointment in Mike Totoko. Mike's Managing Director of Wairau Pacific and founded 2-Year Consulting, an advisory firm focusing on the commercial growth and economic development of the Maori economy. So we're very fortunate to have Mike join us, and he'll give us a lot of good guidance along the way in an area that's important to us. In terms of our financial overview, I think the Q1 report's got the same table in it. We're slightly under budget, purely down to the timing of a couple of key projects, and we expect our expenditure to be in line with budget at the end of 30 June. A couple of movements around the revenue with slightly expected higher external revenue around World Masters Games, which is great news because that shows the registrations are coming in at a slightly faster rate than the predicted curve, so that's a good measure for us. Well, that's probably the major things on the financials. And looking forward to the next sort of quarter, again under the same headings, we continue to work around Tech Week, looking in preparation for that to be a national event, as was requested by Minister Joyce. So we're working with NZ Tech and a number of other partners to get that up and running for the May time next year. Construction work continues on Innovation 5A, along with looking for an operator for the space to help activate and provide the necessary services around the companies that will go into there. And we continue to work closely on a Maori business growth workshops set for next year, probably around, I think the topics agreed were around food and beverage, the creative sectors, but also ICT digital as we move forward. Build Auckland and CBD Jobs and Skills Hub is a new one, which actually helps provide city centre connecting of partnerships. So it's a partnership with central government to help connect, again, young people into the construction centre.